SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to today's lecture. We will continue our discussion on mineral exploration, taking up some of the case studies and also some important principles, the philosophies behind mineral exploration. We saw how we effectively utilized the mineral chemistry of the indicator mineral in exploration of diamondiferous kimberlite, and that was one example which was more based on a methodology that is developed and is very widely practiced. So today we will discuss something about the use of genetic models. So use of genetic models in mineral exploration. As we have already discussed, we have seen through a wide spectrum of mineral deposits forming by many different types of processes: seafloor hydrothermal process, land based hydrothermal process, magmatism, sedimentation, weathering and erosion, surface sedimentation process, and so on. And study of these deposits have led to proposition of the hypothesis on their origin. And these hypotheses on their origin essentially have come from study of the key geological elements from in different magnitude, and identifying such key geological elements, and then also the geological elements or the constituent elements when it comes down to processes which operate at a less dimension in a regional scale or an ore district scale, and then coming again focusing on the processes which are operating in the deposit scale. So all these have to be taken into account while formulating any mineral exploration criteria which is based on the concepts of ore genesis. So that's still very indispensable for us. We develop, or we keep on refining the concepts of ore genesis, but then anytime we think of exploration of any deposit type, which I said before that today the mineral exploration is mostly targeted towards specific genetic type of deposit of a specific metal. And I gave the example, let's say if we want to explore for copper, we have to decide whether we are actually will be exploring for copper in the volcanogenic massive sulfide deposits, which are likely to be quite widespread as they are in many of the cratonic blocks, like the examples which we have considered. Let's then have a look as to what kind of genetic model that we have developed for a volcanogenic massive, taking the example of the volcanogenic massive sulfide deposit. Here the deposit model goes like this. We have seen this diagram before. This is the feeder stockwork zone with its typical alteration around it. This is the massive sulfide lens, sharp footwall contact and diffuse hanging wall, sharp diffuse and footwall contact, sharp hanging wall contact with the hanging wall volcanics and chemogenic sediments, and metal zone, copper, zinc and lead kind of lateral and vertical zoning. And this, as far as the origin is concerned, we have seen that it could be thought of as a seafloor hydrothermal system, initially starting with a rift kind of a setting where there should be a constant source of heat, where the seawater is actually will be circulating in the form of very large convection cells, where the seawater will get in through the fractured sea floor basalt, and then encountering higher and higher temperature, it exchanges component with the seawater and gets enriched with respect to the metals like copper, zinc and silver, copper, zinc and lead, depending on what the deposit you are looking at, like whether it's Cypress type or it is a Kuroko type. So, here number one, that at a heat source that is sometimes manifest by a large seal like synvolcanic hypabyssal intrusion to initiate and to drive to sustain a long lived high temperature hydrothermal system. This turns out to be one of the important key aspect of the genesis of volcanogenic massive sulphide deposits. A high temperature reaction zone that forms through the interaction involved seawater. So, this is the outcome which we have seen. Deep penetrating synvolcanic faults that focus recharge of the discharge of the metal bearing hydrothermal fluid, and we have seen that it has to have a initial impervious silica rich cap on it, which allows or which helps in developing of that fluid pressure, and which is then again the fluid movement becomes the fluid starts to move or to converge to the upper zones by the synvolcanic faults. Footwall and hanging wall alteration zone, it comes to a deposit scale feature, and as you have seen here, the massive sulphide deposit that formed at or near the sea floor, whose metal content was refined by successive hydrothermal events. Then distal products, this is primary exhalites that represents a hydrothermal contribution. So, now if we with this kind of a framework, we would like to just have a look. This is the model that has been developed, which we had a brief look. This is the impervious layer which was initially formed, and these are the synvolcanic fault, and this represents the zone in which we are getting the volcanogenic massive sulphide deposits, the lens massive sulphide lens and the feeder alteration pipe, and we somehow have some idea about the different elements of the genetic model. So, then we have to see the applicability and the significance to exploration, look and going down from the features which are the largest dimension, larger scale features to the deposit scale, district scale and the local scale. So, the large scale features which are obvious to us is a large scale geodynamic environment, means the moment we are talking about volcanogenic massive sulphide deposit, what is there at the back of our mind is that we are generally looking for a paleo rift kind of a system, and as we have seen in many of the cases, to account for the presence of the subvolcanic intrusion, which more of a felsic type of nature, we generally bring in either a backer kind of spreading center or even some mixed type of tectonic environment in which we can have this kind of deposit. So, the first and foremost becomes is the crustal scale geodynamic environment and the identification of such kind of crustal scale features, and the volcanosedimentary environment which we need to have, and the individual deposit environment. These are the three stages. So, the two important questions that we have is what elements in the model influence the efficiency and longevity required for an ore forming submarine hydrothermal system, because we might have been able to identify more than one process, but the question is that which one of them is actually is most influencing the ore forming process. If such kind of a critical process is existing, then formulation of our exploration criteria becomes easy. And then, are these elements missing from the current model? As we have said that ore genetic models, they keep on getting refined based on any observation that is made later on, or any kind of information that is coming independently from some other source. So far as the metal source, fluid evolution, all these things are concerned. It may so happen that the model that is generated as a first working model may not have all the elements, and it may have that some of the elements may be missing from the current model, whose inclusion in a particular basin or basins would result in a VAMS formation. Means, for example, when we try to answer the basic query that if we talk of two identical geological environment, one has a volcanogenic massive sulphide deposit, the other one does not have. So, in that case, it becomes very important to ascertain whether this absence of a mineralization in one particular region, so far as not been identified, can it be ascribed very precisely to the absence of certain element which is actually out of some process. So, this is how the situation could be depicted, that there is a mental upwelling, and then there is crustal scale thinning and the upwelling of the asthenosphere and formation of basaltic crust, and that part of the Midoceanic system is deformed with is an extensional regime where there are normal faulting and all these things are taking place here. And then this is the initial stage, and then this is it leads to the deposition of this. This is the impervious cap that is shown here, and the faults, and these are the small subvolcanic bodies which are forming here, which are responsible for providing the heat, and these things undergoes kind of a collapse called a collapse. And now this stage we are finding that it is actually now the tectonic movement has just reversed. Now from an extensional regime it has been changed to a compressional regime, where the early formed volcanogenic sulfide deposits, the different other units are actually folded, and so this is the continued drifting that results in a bimodal volcanism. Extension provides the heat source for sustained hydrothermal activity. So this kind of is a hypothesis giving the way the process is operated to the formation of the VMS deposits. So now we will try to find out that what kind of large scale features or deposit scale features, minor scale features that we should be looking for. So extensional setting providing high level heat source and deep cross stratal permeability caused by faults developed and reactivated during extensional are crucial. So this is the geodynamic environment, that the reactivation during the extensional, this permeability caused by the faults developed and reactivated during extensional are crucial for the formation of a volcanogenic massive sulfide deposit. Now how we will be basically recognizing a rift environment. So the recognition of the rift environment would come from such kind of elements, that a pre-rift volcanosedimentary or sedimentary succession that could be part of an oceanic island, continental margin or epicontinental sequence. That is number one. So there could be syn rift succession characterized by a bimodal volcanic or volcanosedimentary complex that is dominated by either basalt or andesitic basalt or rhyolitic volcanic rocks. So in other cases there are where we get bimodal felsic and siliciclastic felsic deposits, a post rift thermal subsidence, which we have seen from the sketch that we just saw. The post rift thermal subsidence succession characterized by well stratified marine sedimentary rocks with or without volcanic rocks or differentiated arc volcanic rocks, indicative of a return of a compressive arc tectonic regime. So these are strictly based on the model that we have built up that works as a genetic, that's a working model, and then what is basically being discussed here is that whether that working model could be translated into an exploration formulation of exploration criteria and see how it will work. So in that case, what are the different elements that would be required for the identification of the first component, that is a major scale rift environment. Evidence from sedimentary structures, volcanic facies and fossils of widespread submarine environment, and rapid subsidence from terrestrial or shallow marine environment to deep marine environment. Extensive syn volcanic dike swarms as evidence of rifting and subsidence. Widespread moderate to strong regional semi-conformable alteration, and the local areas of strong hydrothermal alteration and metallic mineralization. So here we are coming from the scale, now we are zeroing down or coming down in the scale to deposit scale process, where the hydrothermal alteration and metallic mineralization with pre and syn rift successions. Presence of high level co-magmatic subvolcanic intrusion. This is for the sustenance of the heat for driving the hydrothermal convection cell. It could be tonalite, transhemitic or quartz diorite, gabbro. So, these are all coming from the rock associations that we have seen in our study of the volcanogenic massive sulfite all across the world in different types of settings. And the volcanosedimentary environment and recognition. So, end members dominated by either flow, volcanic clastic or sedimentary lithophases, and the exploration relevant characteristics common to VMS volcanosedimentary. So, it is a proximal vent area recognized by felsic flows, domes, swarms of thin volcanic dikes. Fault bounded basins, depressions or grabens defined by abrupt changes in facies such as the occurrence of a thick ponded flow under volcanic clastic facies. VMS deposits with a VMS district are distributed on 1 or 2 stratigraphic intervals. This is actually very important when you come to the district scale feature, that the VMS districts are distributed on 1 or 2 stratigraphic intervals. The favorable stratigraphic intervals marks a hiatus in volcanism, because that is what is the time during which the massive sulfide lenses would form. So, it should mark a hiatus in volcanism, and after which we will have the later volcanism will be forming the hanging wall volcanics and regional semi-conformable alteration zones are areas of altered rocks with tens of kilometers of strike length that extend downward from the paleo sea floor to the subvolcanic intrusion. So, this is important, because if we think that in a VMS district we will be expecting, once we identify a paleo rift kind of reef or all this volcanosedimentary succession and the tectonic evolution that we saw, once we identify, then we will be looking for and we expect that there could be at least many such deposits will be occurring in a particular district, and we will have regional semi-conformable alteration zones at the areas of altered rocks with tens of kilometers of strike length that extend downwards from the paleo sea floor to the subvolcanic intrusion, which we have this is a part of our model, the part of the model that is proposed. Then we can have a look on the, when we started the topic of mineral exploration, we introduced the subject of mineral exploration. There we get ourselves introduced to these 2 different modes of operation of this mineral exploration. One is a greenfield exploration, as we said that in any particular area where there is no known deposit occurring, or there is no report of any such deposit which is occurring there, and with some idea of the geology, and where an exploration program is actually being contemplated from the very beginning. So, here the geology that has to be looked for is that, or the way it should go in a greenfield exploration program, the compilation of existing geological data, because this area is only supposed to be having the reconnaissance kind of information that is available, could be the very small scale geological map, and also it could be helped by availability of many of the area scale or regional scale geological map and the geophysical anomaly map, such as the aeromagnetic anomaly map or the airborne gravity anomaly map, and all these geological information could be looked upon, and the reconnaissance mapping to identify rift succession. So, that becomes as we discussed, to identify a rift because in any case that element has to be present there irrespective of whatever the way it has evolved later on. Subvolcanic intrusions, presence of subvolcanic intrusions, and to identify areas of mineralization and alteration. So, hierarchically moving down from much larger scale features to deposit scale features. And then the other aspect that also could be looked into here is that if even though we have said that no two occurrences could be same in all respect, or no two occurrences will be identical to each other, each mineral deposit occurrence is unique and has some features which will always make it distinctly different from others. But since we are in the process of putting them up, clubbing them up together to the different groups on a classification scheme, so we could always go into and look at the characteristics of a VMS deposit which occurs in a different terrain where some insight could be obtained. So that these will serve our the basic information based on which we can go on to explore in greenfield. And geochemistry, sampling for petrochemistry, the major trace and rare earth elements, which we know that they will be the kind of volcanosedimentary sequence that you have been looking for, a tholeiitic basalt or any subvolcanic intrusion, and the fluids and the in terms of their trace element characteristics, rare earth element pattern, and all these could help in identifying a reef-related volcanic intrusive rocks. So these all have been periodically and constantly being contributed by petrologists in tectonic discrimination of the rock types coming from different tectonic regimes such as rift or continental convergent zones. They are very well characterized by their chemistry, specifically with respect to the trace and the rare earth elements. Then sampling major and trace elements plus metals and oxygen isotopes to characterize the alteration mineralization. And then the geophysics, as we will be also be seeing as case studies, they do volcanogenic massive sulfide deposits do have a very interesting geophysical, they are very interesting contrast as far as the physical properties are concerned, like magnetic, gravity and electrical properties, by virtue of the sulfide minerals that they have in good content, good concentration. They could be very well be studied by geophysical surveys, as I told, airborne. They could be also local scale ground geophysical surveys, airborne geophysical surveys to see at a larger scale, and then magnetic, electromagnetic and radiometric methods could always be utilized. And as in our beginning of the introduction of the subject of mineral exploration, we got ourselves reminded that successful discovery of any mineral deposit is essentially a synthesis of information obtained from all different methodologies and techniques, and then when they are all treated synthesized together, then only it leads to mineral deposit discovery, because it gives us reinforcement of many different information from many different sources, which will be converging towards the common theme. And then situation in case of a brownfield means where there are some districts or some regions which are already identified in larger scale, and then we would just like to examine that whether we could get some more of such number of occurrences of VMS anywhere nearby, anywhere within the old district. So detailed mapping to identify synvolcanic faults, intrusions, and proximal volcanic environment permissive for VMS formation. Proximal VMS environment will always be indicating that there should be a feeder pipe with a typical stockwork mineralization and alteration. So map limits of alteration, mineralogical zonation, 3-dimensional GIS compilation and interpretation of all data. So we as of now we don't have much, we have not introduced this subject of GIS, but this is the, as we will be discussing sometime later on, this GIS, that is Geographic Information System, is the most widely used current technology of synthesis of information, compilation of information, using very simple concepts of data synthesis, data integration in space, because whatever is our purpose, we are always talking in terms of any particular event or any deposit that is occurring in space with reference to space, means the area that we are talking about, the geological conditions and the whatever tectonic interpretation we are making, and we are essentially targeting to get those localized parts or the points, pinpoint the areas where it is the most likely occurrence of a VMS deposit. So, in a brownfield exploration, drilling can always go on wherever there is a suitable target that is identified. Also must consider economic parameters, that is size, designing drill, because these are more of economic parameters, which also we will be discussing. In case of geochemistry, we can go to sampling to aid the rock identification and to establish the chemostratigraphy, that will add stratigraphic correlation of favorable stratigraphic intervals, because we have seen that they are sometimes restricted to particular stratigraphic horizon, and resolution of structural problems. This is also very important whenever we get deposits which are deformed, like those which are present in the old Archean cratons. Such deposits would have definitely undergone some amount of deformation or metamorphism. There it is very essential to work out the different episodes of deformation, the stages of deformation, and the very nature and the ways. It is very difficult, very essential to understand any amount of disruption or modification to the original morphology of the ore body that has taken place. Systematic sampling of the surface outcrops and core to define, characterize and vector within alteration, and then systematic soil, vegetation, water and sampling which is appropriate, which some of them will be the part of geochemical prospecting that we will be discussing a little bit in principle. So, to sum up, and then we can always go for ground and borehole geophysical surveys, and magnetic, electromagnetic, induced polarization, gravity, and depending on the style of mineralization, as we will be discussing, it is very much even though there are lots of such techniques that are available to us, sometimes one works better than the other depending on very specific geological conditions. So, this is how we can go about so the model is with us. So, the genetic model. So, likewise we can think of any other deposit type. Let us say for example, the lode type gold deposit in the Archean granite greenstone terrains. There the gold concentration in the rock or the lodes that we talk about will be too small and negligible to give any very distinct geophysical or geochemical signatures. There also it is very important that we also take into consideration the genetic hypothesis or the models on the genesis that have been orogenesis that have been proposed and evolved, and based on that to identify which are the critical processes. Such critical processes or the constituent processes and the deposit scale processes have to be well translated into exploration target or the fixing of the target identification which can be done. And so we with this, and as we will be seeing as you have already discussed through all the entire spectrum of deposits, starting from magmatics, the sedimentary, paleoplacers, and the volcanogenic massive sulfide deposit, the epithermal deposits in young volcanic islands, and the unconformity related deposits. All these deposits we have seen that their origin is the way they have originated has been proposed, which can be very well correlated with the geological elements, identifiable geological elements, which will be very very useful in formulation of the exploration criteria, going to the field and actually finding those geological elements, and then supplement or add up the information with whatever surveys, geochemical or geophysical surveys that we do, will finally lead to the discovery. So, thank you. So, we will be continuing on this.